Elon Musk shocked everyone in what was expected to be a routine $10 million fine hearing with a single sentence. This penalty betrays the law itself. So how can one man, with just one sentence, turn an entire courtroom upside down? It was supposed to be another routine hearing. A billionaire, a fine, and a courtroom full of people expecting nothing more than a quick resolution. But what happened that day in courtroom 12D of the federal courthouse in San Jose, California, left everyone, judges, lawyers, reporters, and even the bailiff, completely stunned. The question on everyone's mind as they left the courtroom wasn't about the money or the legal technicalities. It was this: how does one man, standing alone with nothing but a single sheet of paper, dismantle a $10 million penalty with nothing but the truth? The morning had started like any other. The sun streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Reporters sipped coffee from paper cups, their cameras poised and ready. Lawyers, in sharp suits, shuffled through stacks of documents, their voices low and urgent. The case was straightforward, or so it seemed. Elon Musk had been fined $10 million for allegedly violating environmental regulations during the construction of a new Tesla facility. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, had accused him of ignoring repeated warnings about hazardous waste disposal, and the court had handed down the fine as a warning to other corporations. Musk had been summoned to appear in person, and the expectation was clear: pay the fine, apologize, and move on. But when the doors to the courtroom swung open, it wasn't the entourage of lawyers or the usual security detail that walked in. It was just Elon Musk. Dressed in a simple black suit, white shirt, and no tie, he carried nothing but a single folder. His expression was unreadable, his posture calm but resolute. The room fell silent as he took his seat at the defendant's table. Alone. No lawyers, no assistants, no team of experts. Just him. Judge Margaret Hayes, a seasoned jurist known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp legal mind, entered the courtroom and took her seat. She glanced at Musk, her eyes narrowing slightly. She had seen her fair share of high-profile defendants, but this was different. Musk wasn't just another billionaire trying to flex his wealth or influence. He was here to fight, and he was doing it alone. "Mr. Musk," Judge Hayes began, her voice firm but measured, "you have been fined $10 million for violations of federal environmental regulations. The EPA has provided substantial evidence of your company's negligence. Do you understand the charges against you?" Musk stood, his hands resting lightly on the table in front of him. "I do, Your Honor," he replied, his voice steady, "but I would like to address the court directly, if I may." The room stirred. Reporters leaned forward, their pens poised above notepads. Lawyers exchanged glances. This wasn't part of the script. Judge Hayes raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Proceed." Musk opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a legal brief or a stack of evidence. It was a simple chart, neatly printed and annotated. "Your Honor," he began, "the fine levied against me is based on the assumption that my company knowingly violated environmental regulations. But what the EPA's report fails to acknowledge is that the violations in question occurred during a period when the facility was under the control of a third-party contractor. According to Section 12.7 of the Federal Environmental Compliance Act, liability for violations during contracted operations falls on the contractor, not the parent company, unless negligence can be proven on the part of the parent company." He paused, allowing the words to sink in. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioning. Judge Hayes leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Musk. "Are you suggesting that the EPA's findings are incorrect?" "I'm suggesting," Musk replied, "that the EPA's findings are incomplete. The contractor in question, GreenTech Solutions, has a documented history of non-compliance with environmental regulations. They were hired against the explicit recommendations of my company's internal compliance team. When we discovered the Violations. We immediately terminated the contract and reported the issue to the EPA. But instead of pursuing green tech, the EPA chose to fine Tesla. This is not just a misapplication of the law. It's a failure to hold the responsible party accountable. He placed the chart on the table and slid it toward the judge. This chart outlines the timeline of events, including correspondence with the EPA and internal memos from Tesla's compliance team. It also references the relevant sections of the Federal Environmental Compliance Act. I believe it clearly demonstrates that the fine levied against me is not only unjust, but also sets a dangerous precedent for how liability is assigned in cases involving third-party contractors. The courtroom was electric. Reporters were typing furiously, their eyes darting between Musk and the judge. Lawyers whispered to each other, their expressions a mix of disbelief and admiration. Even Judge Hayes seemed momentarily taken aback. She picked up the chart and studied it carefully, her brow furrowed. "Mr. Musk," she said after a long pause, "you realize that challenging the EPA's findings in this manner is highly unusual." "This court is not in the habit of overturning fines based on the arguments of a single defendant, no matter how compelling." Musk nodded. "I understand, Your Honor, but I also believe that the law is clear. If this court upholds the fine, it sends a message that corporations can be held liable for the actions of contractors, even when those actions are taken against the corporation's explicit instructions. That's not just bad law, it's bad policy." Judge Hayes leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her. For a moment, she said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable. Finally, she spoke. "I will take this under advisement. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As the courtroom emptied, the buzz of conversation grew louder. Reporters scrambled to file their stories, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of excitement. Lawyers huddled in small groups, dissecting Musk's argument. And through it all, Musk remained calm, collecting his folder and walking out of the courtroom with the same quiet determination he had shown when he entered. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled, and a line of spectators stretched down the hallway. Judge Hayes entered promptly at 9 a.m., her expression unreadable. She took her seat and addressed the room. "After reviewing the evidence presented by Mr. Musk and consulting with legal experts, I have reached a decision. The fine of $10 million is hereby reduced to $1 million, acknowledging both the violations and the mitigating circumstances outlined by the defendant." The room erupted in murmurs. Musk stood, his expression unchanged. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said simply. Judge Hayes held up a hand, silencing the room. "But let me be clear," she continued, "this reduction is not a victory for Mr. Musk or Tesla. It is a recognition that the law must be applied fairly and consistently. This court will not tolerate environmental negligence, but it also will not tolerate the misapplication of liability. Mr. Musk, you have brought to light a significant issue, and for that, this court thanks you. But let this be a warning to all corporations. The law is not a tool to be manipulated. It is a standard to be upheld." As the courtroom emptied, the story began to spread. Headlines declared, "Elon Musk slashes $10 million fine with single chart," and legal analysts debated the implications of the ruling. But for Musk, the victory wasn't about the money or the headlines. It was about the principle. It was about standing up and speaking the truth, even when the odds were stacked against him. And as he walked out of the courthouse that day, the question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What would happen if more people had the courage to stand up, to know the rules, and to speak the truth? What do you think? Could this moment change how corporations approach legal battles? Or was this just another example of Elon Musk's unique ability to navigate the system? Share your thoughts below. Let's start a conversation.